Okay.
Could you tell us the story about Annie?
Well, I have a truly scary story to tell. And it's about my sister and her demonic possession. Two years ago, our family decided to start up a special farm. My stepfather and his daughter were heavily involved with this farm, with occasional help from us. Most of the time, they were out in the rural Oklahoma, working until late at night. On occasion, they would bring their harvest into town to be trimmed in the garage. My stepsister spent a lot of alone time in the garage, tending to their harvest. One day, my mother asked me to go and help her tend, so I did. My stepsister, Annie, and I were alone in the garage trimming. And she looked at me and started bawling. I have never seen someone cry so hard. I asked her about what happened, and she stated that she missed her old boyfriend and that her boyfriend had been visiting her. She started to tell stories of things that happened to her. Here's the thing. Annie has never dated anyone. She's in her early 20s, and she doesn't have friends, only relatives. I listened to her story and tried to be as supportive as I could, but I knew she was in a whole nother world. I told my mother about what happened, and she told me to ignore her, and that Annie was just talking crazy. Things started to get weirder after that. Annie would make it a habit to run out into the middle of the night into the rural areas of Oklahoma, stating that she heard a little girl crying and she needed to save her. I tried to help Annie, but she became hysterical and violent. She would lock herself in her room all day, writing Bible verses and how the devil is real. One night during the winter, my mother woke up to someone crying hysterically in her home. She went to investigate and found the cries to be coming from Annie's room. She opened the door, and there was Annie, naked, hiding in the closet, stone cold. We immediately called 911 to admit her to the hospital. The hospital kept Annie there for about a few weeks, but deemed that she was mentally fit. They could not force her to seek mental help if she did not consent. So they had to send her back home. Annie's behavior continued to become more violent, more aggressive, and she started speaking in another language. My parents took her to church, but they wouldn't help. My parents did shaman rituals, but that didn't help. They were out often, so she went to stay with random relatives. But eventually those relatives became afraid of her. The last straw was when she tried to harm the little kids at home, which automatically caused her to be admitted into a psych ward without her consent. During her time there, she regularly got into fights with the staff and continued to mention that Mr. Kim is coming. They asked her who Mr. Kim is, and she stated, the devil. Her room was always ice cold, and when you went in there, you could feel an evil presence. Things in the garage were broken, and the scariest part, there was a giant splash of red paint on the wall, almost resembling an animal scratch. Annie never got better. She is now currently placed in a pastor's home. I haven't spoken to Annie in a few years. The last I heard, she stopped taking her meds and that Mr. Kim is back in town.